Welcome back, Congressman Wenstrup. I know I already introduced you as we went into the segment, but some folks just tuning in, so it's always good to have you in studio, checking face-to-face conversations, which you and I both prefer. So welcome to the new place.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely different, isn't it?
We'll get used to it.
You got no choice. I don't. Anyhow, let us start with, drum roll, maestro. How about Ukraine and Germany? I understand you were recently actually in the country, Ukraine.
Yeah, I went over there just right before Christmas time. Really got some good briefs. It was very interesting, too, Brian, because we were in Kyiv, and you saw them just going about their business, in Kyiv itself. And what some people compared it to is like, we are so used to Russia being on our borders in some way or another that it's kind of like South Korea situation, right?
Sure.
Where South Korea, we have U.S. troops there, and I'm not suggesting we put U.S. troops into Ukraine, but this is a way of life for them. But right now it's very heightened, and they have a will to fight, and they do not like Russia. And even areas where there's a lot of Russian people ethnically, they have the option of leaving Ukraine to go to Russia, and they're not.
Right. I guess that's the big elephant in the room when people are talking back and forth about whether Ukraine is invited to join NATO or not. Separate issue. Obviously, Ukraine is not interested in joining or rejoining Russia, because if they were, Vladimir Putin would welcome them with open arms and say, great, welcome back to the former Soviet bloc. We're glad to have you here. So, but there are pro-Russian insurgents, and that's who's been fighting in the hills, kind of like Castro up in the mountains in Cuba. They're always waging little skirmishes, gunplay, go back and forth. And a lot of Ukrainians have been killed by Russians.
And when I was there, we attended a ceremony, sort of a wreath-laying ceremony, very solemn. And they only do this on the days where Ukrainians have been killed by Russians historically in the last decade or so.
Okay.
Right? And there's only 6 days of the year that they don't do this. So that tells you how long this has been going on and how many people in Ukraine have been killed. And
it's a huge number.
Yeah, and they're not in love with Russia, and they don't want to be part of Russia. And you know what? It should be a clue at some point to the Russian people, at least, to say, why are there like 30 countries surrounding us that have formed something called NATO and that is there to exist to protect them from Russia? Wouldn't that ever occur to him? And maybe even to Putin, like, why don't people like us? Because they don't. But he wants to restore the glory of the Soviet Union as best he possibly can. And he's going about, they're right now, this is more recent news, in the Russian parliament, they are now, they're using every maneuver they can, right? They are going to try and pass a resolution that Crimea and the Donbass is the region that is in play right here for Putin. They're trying to pass a resolution saying those are independent states. They're not part of Ukraine. You see, they're just trying to work anything. And part of that is, I think, for their own people.
A rather Orwellian approach to it. Just change the language, basically, and declare them something that they are not, and it's done. Yeah, there you go.
Even though their government has not declared that. Right. And they have not tried to claim that they're an independent state from Ukraine. But let Russia do it. I mean,
China and Taiwan immediately comes to mind, too, on that one. But go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, well, even more so, I think, with China and Taiwan. No doubt about it. But, he's trying to say they're independent states. Now their claim is that, NATO wants to try and occupy Ukraine. You see how they want to twist the narrative. And so he's really trying, in some ways, want to invoke some type of aggressive action and say, "Oh, we were attacked.
We were
attacked." But Ukraine's been attacked. This is a constant series of attacks that have taken place. So, it's reported that we are delivering some ammunition and some wherewithal to help the Ukrainian people. When I was there, that's what they were asking for. They weren't asking us for troops.
They've been asking for weapons from us forever.
Yeah, and look, Eastern Europe, the former part of the Soviet Union that wants to be separated from Russia and Russia's sphere of influence is seeking these types of things. But then you have Belarus, who has a puppet, which Ukraine did too. Before Zelensky, they had a guy who was willing to be in bed with Putin. Belarus is just to their north, and they now have Russian troops in Belarus. they're someone who's playing puppet to Russia right now.
And there's some concern expressed, I'm sure you know about it, that Russia is going to endeavor to do the same thing, to put into power in Ukraine a puppet of Vladimir Putin. And don't they have free and fair elections in Ukraine? And wouldn't that be a consequence of perhaps a propaganda effort or perhaps cheating in an election for that to be brought about? Because as you just said, you've been there, you've talked to the Ukrainian people, they don't like Russia, and therefore they wouldn't want a puppet of Vladimir Putin in office, right?
That's right. They're proud of their heritage, they're proud of their own identity, and they want to maintain it, and they don't want to be under the thumb of Putin. So it's going to be interesting how things play out in a little bit, the other side of the coin, and I believe there's some collusion between what Russia's doing and what China is doing. China's now flying planes over, fighter planes over Taiwan has been reported. And so are we going to just allow this to happen? Personally, my feeling is I don't think we should go to the Olympics. We should have just somehow put together the Olympics of the democracies in the world.
Wouldn't that be great?
You know,
I mean, the world
let
is
the free world compete.
Yeah, it's not going to come to an end if we don't show up in China for the Olympics and support them by showing up in China with the Olympics. I've already said I'm not much of a boycott guy. I'm not going to watch a minute of the Olympics on television. Not a chance. And I certainly don't feel inclined to support any of the sponsors who are placating the Chinese by putting their monto into the project.
It's really kind of hard to watch. And you know, I did this in a bipartisan fashion just this past week. We sent a letter to to our Olympic committee and gave very strong warnings and advice on what we should brief our athletes on. One, you should not bring your own personal cell phone.
Right.
You know, you get a burner phone when you're going to use and wipe out when you get back, and those should be supplied to them.
Oh, no, just trash it when you get back. Throw it away. Crush it and throw it away. Put it in a recycling bin and shred it up. They make you put an app on there. Tech Friday, Dave Howard was on last Friday talking about this. The app itself is corrupt. It has huge security flaws in it, independent of what you and I both know, Congressman Wenstrup, is that the Chinese Communist Party will certainly be using it to listen, watch, and otherwise monitor every single aspect of each of the athletes' behavior.
Yeah, they're going to know who you call. They're going to know who your relatives are, who your friends are. This is how they operate, and I think it's important for our athletes that are going to know that and to be cautious, and they need to be guided through that process. It's not safe no matter what, and you know, you be careful what you say. Wait till you get home to say something if you want to say something.
Isn't that crazy?
Meantime, go compete and get home. Well, it's very sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, it's like that. Was it Otto Warmbier, the kid? He took a propaganda sign from North Korea and they tortured him to death, basically.
Yeah, we don't even know if that's completely true, right? Or was that I don't know the truth on that or whether he actually did it or not, but regardless, that's exactly the example. You know, the Warmbier family just did get awarded, taken from some of the frozen assets of North Korea. They got awarded $240,000.
Small consolation.
It doesn't come close. It doesn't. It would never be enough, no matter how much they win. But at least it may be inflicting some pain on North Korea in some way. And I'll tell you what, his parents and his whole family have been just amazing through that whole process. But again, gives you some idea of the type of system that is out there that we need to be wary of. And we should not be placating to China.
No.
And if they are not doing it to Americans, they're doing it to their own people, to the Uyghurs and things like that.
Oh, I was just going to mention the Uyghur population. You know, we are self-loathing in our country because of our history of racism. We keep getting reminded every single day how terrible and bigoted we are and how awful it is. And I step back from that and I think of all the progress we've made since the days of Jim Crow and the 1963 Civil Rights Amendment, and you know that we have senators and we had president and we have governors and we have police officers and elected officials and board members, all from the various ethnic communities now in top positions. And what a wonderful thing it is. And here we are placating China, who are literally imprisoning people merely for their religious affiliation. They are imprisoning them. They are killing them. They are indoctrinating them, or otherwise trying to change their hearts and minds away from their evil religion. And It's just horrific, and yet we continue to do wonderful business with them and Disneyland and Disney World, and they're all doing wonderful movie sales over there, and that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, I always think in America, I think of the song America the Beautiful, where we ask God to help us mend our every flaw. That's one of the lines in there, and we have done a lot of that. But we shouldn't be placating others that are heightening those particular flaws that we have worked to amend on behalf of human nature and human beings.
Well, stick with that thought, because I want to know why Germany is busy placating the Russians in connection with not just this Ukraine thing, but this whole global warming crap. Doesn't make any sense to me. And it appears as though we may have lost one of our former most valuable allies. Meantime, got Congressman Brad Wenstrup in the studio. I read an op-ed this morning. No need to go through the details of it again. Tom Rogan wrote it. It's op-ed, dateline January 23rd. Is Germany a reliable ally? Question mark. 9. Berlin goes out of its way on pricing cheap gas cars, exports to China, and keeping Putin calm. Which certainly sums it up quite nicely without having to read the whole article. This Nord Stream 2 pipeline, they're going to be inextricably intertwined with the Russians. Period. End of story. They've stopped their own fuel production. They've shut down the nuclear plants. This is all self-inflicted wounds, all in the name of continuing to burn fossil fuels from Russia. What isn't wrong with this equation? And of course, that puts Germany in a difficult position, being a NATO ally vis-a-vis Russia and what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, I heard you talking about this in the previous section when I was driving in here, and some really good points were made. And you remember Donald Trump, went over to Germany and said, why are you not helping NATO? NATO exists to keep Russia at bay, and you want to buy your energy from them.
I know.
It doesn't make any sense. And you think, look, a military cannot operate without energy, right? And
right.
So you're now making your military dependent on Russia.
Or moving aside from military, your industrial complex, Volkswagen, making cars that you want to sell to China, are now dependent upon Russian gas and energy.
And it's not like you didn't have an option, because you did. We were energy independent. We were exporting energy and more than willing to help our allies with that.
And they did have nuclear power that, last time I checked, is not carbon producing, and they shut those down anyway.
You take, for example, Lithuania. When I speak to Lithuanians in D.C., they're like, no, we want our energy to be reinforced by the United States of America. We don't want to be beholden to Russia for our energy. So none of that makes any sense. And like you said, you see things going on right now that, China is building more coal plants.
Yeah.
We cut down our Keystone pipeline. You made the really good point about how,
that's not going to stop jack squat, man. They're going to burn the oil, period.
They're going to burn the oil, and more than likely, rather than go through a pipeline, they're going to, load it up onto a truck or a rail car and, burn more fossil fuels.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this makes sense if you look at the overall picture as opposed to talking points, right? Talking points that somehow seem to win over environmentalists who maybe not have the whole picture. I'm for a clean environment, but I'm also a common sense person.
Right. And I made the point before the last segment. I've made it many times before. If you are an environmentalist, you must factor into the equation vis-a-vis the XL pipeline that, again, the oil is going to get burned. And they're either going to put it on a rail car or on a tanker truck, burning fossil fuels to get it to its ultimate destination, which will ultimately be China, where they don't have the strict environmental rules, as you pointed out. They're still building coal plants. We're not allowed to do that here in the United States. China is busily doing it all the time. They ensure themselves an effective, long-lasting, reliable energy supply, and we, don't get anything in return. We don't even get a better environment, because the pipeline would have put the oil in our hands, and our environmental laws would have applied relative to the handling and transport and processing of it. Does anybody believe that the Chinese have a higher standard, like compared to the EPA and its regulations?
Or the Russians?
Or the Russians. In the case of Germany, perfect example. This makes no sense if you view it from an environmental standpoint.
But, as we're talking to people, and I had a young gal come up to me, last year sometime, and she said, I love all the things you're doing She said, but do more for the environment. I said, you didn't grow up when I did. You would see the United States. You see a picture of Los Angeles and you can't see the tops of buildings because of smog. Believe me, the United States of America has done more for the environment than any other industrialized nation in the world. And it's very clear. And I said, what we should be doing is exporting all our technology that allows us to do fossil fuels, et cetera, much cleaner than anywhere else in the world. And at the same time, I'm for renewables if it makes economic sense and works for people rather than driving up their fuel costs. But at the same time, I pointed out to her, I said, so if China's burning more coal and we're doing everything cleaner, what have we accomplished?
Zero-sum gain, or maybe even worse.
It's worse, really. Yeah. I said, and you do, I think most people have been educated enough without woke influence to understand that the earth does rotate 24 hours a day, right? Yeah. And so it's all one atmosphere. And although, we're making improvements, if everybody else is not, we don't help the overall atmosphere.
Got that right.
Yep.
Somebody's burning a fire next door and you're in your neighborhood, you're going to get some smoke flowing into your yard, whether you like it or not. Don't go away. More with Congressman Brad Wenstrup, spending a whole hour in studio. And since we were talking about climate change, the craziness in the last segment, I got to go to Operation Choke Point again. Now, for those listeners who remember, that was Eric Holder's putting pressure on banks to stop doing business with otherwise lawful businesses. All right, so that led to payday lenders to ultimately sue the FDIC and OCC, alleging that the regulators were aiming to force banks to cut ties with them, which is exactly what the Justice Department was trying to accomplish. Also, like firearms manufacturers, they were arguing to the banks, if you don't stop doing business with these folks, we're going to apply, regulatory pressure on you, compliance audits, and those things can be expensive, and nobody in the banking or healthcare world has all their I's dotted and their T's crossed in terms of the regulations. Doctor, those things are onerous, they're long, and it's virtually impossible to have 100% compliance. Mm-hmm. Try as you might. So out of fear over getting a compliance audit, the banks capitulate and do with the will of Eric Holder. Got the same thing going right now in the banking industry. This thing shocked me, although I don't know why I was shocked. The nation's top financial regulators are now going to be forced to prepare for potential threats to the U.S. financial system from, drumroll maestro, climate change. They say regulators are going to press banks to prepare for the fallout from a warming planet by stepping up security of fossil fuel financing. They're going to have to start reporting to the federal government the businesses that they work with and the carbon footprint that these businesses do. It's kind of like a scoring mechanism. This is crazy.
Well, it's a religion for a lot of people.
It sure as hell is.
And a lot of them truly believe in it. And you got to ask yourself, we used to, historically in this country, we thank God for all our natural resources. Right? Our ability to grow our own food and do all these wonderful things, and the waterways that we have, and all these things that can make life better for human beings.
Yeah.
Who's to say that God didn't have in mind that some of these things, although they may have some deleterious effects that you want to correct, but who's to say they weren't put there by God, to help us as a country? But it's a wonderful natural resource that we have, but we want to be responsible with it, and I get that. But this is a religion. This goes to a bigger problem, Brian. This goes to the problem that we do not have a Democrat. We do not have a republic anymore. We don't have the democracy that we think we have. If you look at what happened in the UK last week. There's an irony there, right? The UK said, we're done with COVID. We're done.
Yeah.
No more mandates, this and that.
And there were politics involved in that too, because Boris, the UK Prime Minister, was busted partying without a mask and apparently had weekly gatherings violating all the rules that were put in place. He gets a world load of butthurt on that from his constituents, and then he says, "All right, we're going to lift all the mandates. Done, over with. We're done."
Yeah, so he called it. But the interesting thing is that is the country that we fought a revolution over to rid ourselves of tyranny. Now they're the ones that just removed some tyrannical powers from their government, and we still got them, and they're growing. But, people ask me, I remember somebody saying to me in my first term in Congress, they said, oh, you're in Congress. That's a powerful position. I said, actually, it's pretty emasculating, to be honest with you, because what happens is these agencies have rule of law. They just put things out there as regulations. We didn't vote for them. We didn't decide, hey, this is a good thing for America. The people weren't represented in these decisions. An administration was, and that's it. And so it's gone in the wrong direction. When our country started, we just had 3 agencies: state, treasury, and more.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm fighting like mad right now. I'm telling you, Brian, I'm in hearings in intelligence committees, one of them, where I sit there and they might tell me what they can't tell me. I said, whoa, time out. You don't understand. We created your agency. Yeah. And this committee in particular is a selective committee to have oversight over you. You don't get to say, it's our policy not to tell you. You are obligated to tell us. We represent the people. This is a country of we the people. So the trend has gone this way for decades now, and we've got to bring that back.
You got that right. Well, and on one illustration of having brought it back, we had a good Supreme Court decision relative to the OSHA mandate. Trying to regulate something that has nothing to do specifically with the workplace, far exceeding the scope of the law and the delegation of authority to those administrative agencies. And so the Supreme Court spanked them. It's just sad that 3 justices thought it was appropriate for OSHA to try to mandate or to try to make a ruling over something like that beyond, when it was so far beyond the scope that it was a laughable notion that they could regulate it.
And states have to claim their authorities as well. You got that right. If you look at the states, have pretty much always. I have a state medical license, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have a federal medical license. I know. Yeah. Our federal agencies in healthcare, for example, accept any of your state licenses. That's how it's always worked. Now you have the federal government determining what you're supposed to do within your state when it comes to healthcare and wearing masks and those types of things. And you're talking about making kids wear masks, or you don't get federal dollars for your school. I mean, these are local.
Arizona's fighting that one now. They just filed a lawsuit against the Treasury Department over that. The Treasury Department said that they want their COVID money back because Arizona made receiving the money in schools contingent upon them being open and the kids not being forced to wear a mask. Now, did they say you can't wear a mask? No, you just can't force one. And that the response was from the Treasury just to change the rules that govern the allocation of those COVID funds and to add a new provision saying you can't force schools to not make kids wear masks. It's crazy. It's the creep.
And maybe Arizona has looked into the negative effects of masks on kids. Is it leading to depression or other mental illness? Is it stymieing their intellectual development? All of those types of things. And also, does it even make a difference on their health?
No. Unless it is a tight, properly fitting N95 or KN95. I've been saying this for years. They're stupid and pointless. Plus, kids play with them and fiddle with them all the time. It just probably makes matters worse. Congressman Wenstrup, don't go away. We're going to election. In the meantime, Congressman Brad Wenstrup in here spending a full hour. We're going to end in the next segment on some positive news. In this segment, though, I wanted to ask you, gauge your reaction on this whole redistricting thing that's going on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, the process, and sometimes I don't fully understand it. Most people don't.
Sausage making, you mean?
Yeah, and one of the things somebody said to me one time is, people gerrymander themselves. They tend to go to places where the governmental issues tend to be what they like.
Right.
If you like California, go to California. We see more people leaving California. Sure. Just leave your politics behind if you're leaving California and going to Texas and things like that. And so, if the state legislature, it's your elected representative, is drawing the lines and actually being approved by the governor, it's probably based on the fact that there may be more Republicans in the state, and therefore there's more Republican representatives. So there may be more Republican type districts. I understand the arguments and the concerns of the minority of wanting to keep places like Cincinnati whole and this and that. And so that's what was worked out. But with this is done, it's signed by the governor, and what process now is it goes to the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, which maintained jurisdiction over the last one they threw out. So it's going to take another fresh.
And so now they say, no, throw it out. You got to go differently. And I guess if they don't get it done to everyone's liking per se, then it's only 4 years, not 10.
Right, and that's the current one. That's the second one they rolled out. First one was a 4-year because they couldn't get any buy-in from the Democrats. They just get a new one, same thing, 4-year, no buy-in from Democrats. Going to get reviewed by the Supreme Court. And what I've been told, this is a matter of strategy because we do have a primary that's fast approaching. Mm-hmm. So if you can keep this tied up in the courts, then you keep the redistricting map that they came out with, the one that the Democrats hate, that's 4 years long. But you're going to, as long as you can keep this thing, it's almost like a perpetual motion machine. Well, we'll go back to the table and we'll do it again. And we'll come out with another 4-year plan because the Democrats won't like it and we'll end up back in court. So you can see how long this could possibly play out. So
I guess they're playing chicken with the primary date. I would like to know, obviously, I would like to know the district that was drawn. Ohio lost a seat, so I expect to have more geography. And so now I pretty much have from, as it's drawn now, eastern Hamilton County all the way to West Virginia. Instead of being in 8 counties, I'm now in 14.
That's amazing.
And you know what? Good folks out there. They're a little more spread out.
They are.
They don't live side by side.
Door to door is a little bit of a problem when you get more out into like Adams County and places like that. Congressman Wenstrup will pause. 7:49 right now for the Buckeye City Talk Station. Brian Thomas wrapping it up with Congressman Brad Wenstrup, who's been kind enough to spend a full hour today in studio going over a whole host of issues. And Lord Almighty, we could probably take 4 or 5 more hours and not even complete the whole list of issues that we could go through, Congressman, but I sure appreciate it. But what we did promise, though, and I'll give you credit for the idea, which is let's end on a positive note. And this was really great news. Now, I don't know how many concessions had to be made or, who did what to whom in order to get it. But $20 billion investment in Ohio by Intel to make chips, that is amazing.
And it's thousands of high-paying jobs, although inflation may hurt some of that. But nonetheless.
What once was high-paying.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it's right in the right direction. This is important to us for our national economic security.
Yes.
This is important for our national security.
Yes.
I mean, we are seeing, just in our district, we have Kenworth trucks, right? They have trucks sitting at the fairgrounds waiting for chips. Uh-huh. This is what they will be producing. And we have seen most of our problems, and problems around the world too, are when you find yourself in a dependency on your supply chain. And America is knee-deep in that right now. It's happened over the last 50, 60 years. This solves one of those problems.
Right. Well, COVID was a great wake-up call for every man, woman, and child in the world to realize that you do not want China to be the sole supplier of your medicine, for God's sake. Right. Our American troops were relying on Chinese manufacturing to get medicine. You enter a state of war, which we may very well be, given the situation with China and Taiwan. What if they just say, yeah, no, we're not going to give you antibiotics anymore. Sucks to be you.
Yeah,
you're done.
If you'd have told me when I was serving in Iraq that my protective equipment and my pharmaceuticals relied on an adversary, I'd say, how did our military let this happen? But we are working to correct that. And this is one step in the right direction. And this is what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did. It made it feasible. We've had no inversions since this has been in place. No company said, we're leaving the United States and we're going elsewhere. Burger King, I think, was the last one.
Went to Canada
before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went in because we competed globally. This is a good place to actually manufacture and do things. So,
because we have roads, bridges, infrastructure, and a reliable power source. Every country in the world that can't say that, even though some second world or third world country might say, hey, we would love to have your business operate here and we'll give you anything you ask for to do that. The response is going to be, well, we can't do that because you don't have any roads, bridges, or infrastructure, or reliable power source. So, and a corrupt government probably on top of that.
And I can tell you the process. It's in part really led by the state. And so I want to give credit to our officials in Columbus that actually did the legwork and really sat down and made the case for Intel to come here. One of my colleagues from Oregon was pretty bummed out last week when Ohio got it over Oregon. So give credit where it's due, but this is a big thing for Ohio. This is a big thing for the United States of America. It can really help our economy in so many ways, and more than just in the production of chips, but all that they touch.
Well, and my only concern now is, since you mentioned inversions, is that, you know, if the left gets their way and gets rid of the tax cuts from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that were so successful in helping America, then maybe they'll just pack their bags up and they'll go elsewhere, like Canada.
Yeah, and that is a huge concern. So grateful that right now Build Back Broke seems to be dead on arrival.
It seems to be, yeah.
And I'll tell you, Brian, I can't wait till November. We are recruiting great candidates, people that want to come and serve their country and put ourselves on a path. You know, one of the things I mentioned to you off air is that, you know, when it comes to any bill, if you really sat and looked at any bill that came before you and you said, does this give Americans more freedom, and will the next generation say thank you? That might be a good litmus test for a lot of things.
That's
right?
You know, I don't mean to discount that, your idea, but that sounds like almost like a Thomas Massey litmus test too. You know, I've always joked with that guy. I know in advance how he's going to vote. You name the bill, I can tell you if I know enough about it. I know exactly which direction he's going to come down on, and you're pretty reliable in that regard too. And finally, I just have to get this out of the way because we have a caller who brings this up all the time. Corey, you know who you are. He thinks that you signed on to the red flag law in the National Defense Authorization Act, and I told him this morning, and I've told him before, no, that was pulled out of the final bill. Can you please correct the record for him so we can all move on past the red flag bill that applied to service members?
Yeah, as we went into voting for the National Defense Authorization Act, obviously we were extremely against that being in there. Those on the Armed Services Committee said that was somehow accidentally put in there.
But it slipped.
Yeah, but you had both the Democrat chairman of Armed Services Committee and the ranking member Republican saying, we promise you this will not be in the final bill. It never should have been in there, and we're taking that out. And sure enough, when it went to conference with the Senate, it was taken out as promised. And interestingly, more Democrats voted for the original House bill and fewer voted for the conference bill. More Republicans voted for the conference bill and fewer Republicans voted for what came out of the House itself. So that tells you that I want to give our ranking member credit for really sticking to his guns on a lot of things, and the Senate too, for that matter. And we actually got a more Republican bill than what originally left the House.
Congressman Wenstrup, thank you so much, not only for your service to our country, Mr. Military man, your service to the community, and your being at least one of the more reliable people we have in Washington, D.C. It's a crazy place, and we need voices of reason like you. So thanks again for your time. Best of health to you and your family.
Thank you. God bless.